Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Linda, would you take the roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Butterball.
Here.
Councilman Kashadi.
Here.
Councilman Carper.
Here.
Councilman Ickes.
Here.
Councilwoman Jordan is absent. Councilman Kelly.
Here.
Mayor Pacifico.
Here. Following our city council meeting on November 8th, we had an executive session to discuss potential litigation, personnel, and real estate. And with that, we'll now open the floor for public comment. If anybody would like to address council, you may come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments to under 5 minutes.
Hi, Ed Cruz. I'm here about the property at 1709 North 4th Avenue in Juniata. Most of you know I'm on the Altoona Area School Board. When people had issues with the administration and they would come to me, I'd tell them to come talk to the complete board because most of the time the board doesn't really know what's going on. Administration tries to fix it or handle it before it gets to the board. Sometimes they don't want to cause their employees more work or to discipline their employees. You might think I'm here to complain, but I'm only here really to be treated as good as the violators in my neighborhood. I sent you all an email with pictures. I'm assuming all the council members got it, so I'm not going to go through this whole situation. I do have some questions, though. The city spent about 21 hours clearing Ron Mallory, I believe is the person's name, property. They had 3 guys there for over 7 hours. Does Ron get charged for that time? Is there a lien against his property for that? Because it's the second time that it's been done. I know that for a fact because I called before. The city come down, they cut the brush back, they push it back, and the guy owns multiple properties in the city. He has a nice house. It's in Logan Township, right on city border. But I'm not understanding how he gets this work done for free. And no lien, nothing put against him, and he still hasn't finished it. If you look at the pictures, when you come down the alley, the alley behind my house is the only way in and out. So when you go to the end of that alley, you cannot see to turn on to 18th Street. So the city cleared 90% of it. I don't know why they didn't finish the last 10% of it. So I would like to know if he is charged anything. If I cut down the trees myself that are in the right-of-way, can I throw them right onto the property owner's property? Because that's what the city does when they trim back trees that have fallen on the highway. Nobody's going to answer. It's just a question. I just make statements.
Well, it's public comment. This is
Okay,
public
so-
discussion.
So when do I get answers to my questions in my email?
Well, I think you just sent the email this afternoon. I
Right,
think it
yeah.
came to me at 3:10.
And
I'm
I
on the
wasn't-
road coming home from work. I work during the day as you do, and so this is the first I've seen it.
Okay.
And I didn't think that you'd mentioned you were coming to the meeting tonight, so I haven't had a chance to even look at it and do anything with it. So I think there has to be a reasonable expectation.
And I understand that. I'm
And
just
I think
saying,
we
I
have
didn't
a
know if
reasonable
someone was gonna
expectation of
comment
getting
back
back
to
to you
me.
once we see it.
That's
Okay?
fine. I didn't know if someone's coming back or I'm just going to stand here waiting, or should I continue onward? I didn't.
And
know
whatever
how-
email you sent, I never,
No, I didn't. I
never
only sent it to the
received.
council members. I didn't send it to your email. I can forward it to you, but I just sent it to the 5 council members. So I don't know if anyone can answer this question. If your property line goes right to the front of your property and does not include your sidewalk or the trees after that, are you still responsible for your sidewalk and trees after that?
The way the code is written, you have an obligation as far as like particularly in wintertime to clear your sidewalk I believe it's 24 hours after. I'm sorry. I believe it's 24 hours after the snow's finished. I know there's something in the code relative to maintenance of trees, which are in the right of way. We had that pending suit relative to someone that became an issue with the court as far as it being in the right of way, whose responsibility it was.
But even if it's on the other side of your property line, I guess is what I'm asking. Like, when I was discussing this, I guess that tree is in the right of way. There's numerous trees in the right of way in the alley, on the alley side of the telephone poles. But according to Nate, that's still the property owner's responsibility, even though it's in the right of way. So that's why I was asking.
That's what the code reads.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's always been my understanding that the property owner is responsible for the sidewalk
Correct.
out to the curb. And that would include the trees that are in.
Yes.
Now, you're contending that the Public Works Department of the city cleared brush or
Well,
something
they
on
did
someone on a
clear-
private?
Yes, they did do that for sure. Now, to their benefit, or when you come down North Fifth Avenue to 18th Street, you could not see it all. So they come down and cleared that corner back.
You mean when you pull out of the alley? At the
But the alley, they didn't finish the alley. You can't see pulling out of the alley. But my point is, it's really not their responsibility. It's Ron Mallory's responsibility, but he will never come do it. So I just don't know how you get it done. Like, when does it get pushed to where he's charged for the amount of time you already have done, so that maybe next time he'll do it himself? If you keep doing it for him, he's never gonna do it.
Well, I guess my question then to staff is, did we clear this brush out? Did we do this? Because I know we've had problem where we have like cut yards on property owners where then we just put the lien on the property with the cutting of that. So is that the case with this?
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about. You just heard it about it the first time tonight. Nate, if you can weigh in on what Mr. Cruz is talking about and give us some clarity, that would be good.
I'm assuming this was on 18th Street
Yeah.
somewhere.
North
I
18th
think
and
you and I
North
have
5th.
talked about this, if I remember correctly, but what we've been instructed to do by past council, if we get a complaint because it's a site distance, an immediate site distance concern, we will normally go out and take care of a minor issue, because we've been put on notice that there is something wrong there. So, you know, our past council has always said, if it's not that big of a deal, you just go take care of it. The cost of the lien is a decent amount of money to try to put it on the property. So if it's not that much, you just kind of take care of it. And that's kind of a common practice. We don't do it a lot, but if there is something, we will go out and take care of it. Yeah, it's just,
So
we
I-
probably do it 20 times a year, 20, or just, somebody calls in about a stop sign and there's a limb hanging down, or somebody calls in. If somebody will go out and look at it, if it can wait, we'll normally contact the property owner. Rebecca and I've kind of cleaned up some of that over the past year to where it becomes a property maintenance issue, and then they send a code officer out to do it. But if it's something like that, which is a site distance concern, which you
It
just
was.
said, we went out and took care of. And I mean, the cost of the lien is a lot more than just sending a guy out who's in the neighborhood to push something back. So
Well,
that's
you say
that.
but it was 21 hours worth of work that day. My garage is within a half a block there, and I observed it all day. 3 guys there all day long,
Yeah.
clearing that guy's property out.
I can
And
tell
this
you
is
that's
not
what
the
it
first
was,
time
so.
for that guy. So I guess my question is, how do I go about, or what is my next step to have people quit driving across my property because of my neighbors' trees and brush are encroaching the alley, which is the only access to that property? Which, my next question would be, and then I'm out of time, I'm sure, is the blacktop. I would like that alley blacktop, because I'm sure PennDOT would not give me a permit to pull out onto North 4th Avenue right before the hill. They just blacktopped the alley before me, behind the rec center, and since my property and Tyler Hall, that's their only access, is that alley or 18th Street and 17th Street, I would like to know how we go about getting that on the paving list, so.
Well, I
Thanks.
mean, with your property, I can answer one of your questions. If you're sure of where the line is, you could put a fence there.
Well, I would like to do that, and I called, and I'm allowed to do that. The only problem is the guy on the other side of the alley, the only guy that maintains is the one that uses that alley too. Rick doesn't use that alley, and Ron Mallory has never come to that alley, obviously. So it would only hurt the one neighbor who also maintains his property.
Understood.
So I guess when you respond to my email, I'd like to know if I'm allowed to cut those trees down myself and throw them on the property owner's property, or use my backhoe to push it onto their property.
I forwarded Mr. Cruz's email to you, Mayor, and to Linda, to you. And if we could get back to him in a reasonable amount of time with some answers on that. And just for consideration, if we're spending that kind of time on someone's private property because there's a sightline problem, visibility, you know, if we're leaning people for cutting their grass, we may want to consider looking at doing something like that if it's a considerable amount of work, because that's, you know, like I said, we're already doing it for cutting grass, so I think it's just fair.
There needs to be something attached to it that, I mean, our time and our resources
Yeah.
have been spent doing that.
So, but if we could get back to Mr. Cruz then with a reasonable amount of time with some answers on that. All right? Thank you.
Any other public comment?
I'm sorry, I just found out about the meeting just recently. Is this one we can ask about what's going on at Westfall? Is this when we do this?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
My name's Mike Byrne, 2324 16th Avenue. Again, this is sort of like what happened at the township. It was like the last minute we found out something was going on. Was this thing, the impounding thing in Westfall, being discussed at this council meeting tonight?
No.
It wasn't?
No.
Okay, my question is this. When we went to the Logan Township meeting and they posted or started their requirements on November 3rd, the meeting was on November 18th. They posted a thing in the paper and they had like a 2x2 sign on the fence up at Westfall to notify us, the residents, about this. Whenever we went to the meeting and started asking the question, the thing that bothered me was, did the city manager direct the police chief and the streets department to go and do this? And why, in terms of the residents on Fifth Ward, why we weren't given a chance to know from the city that you were considering this, to do this? And that's sort of where my questioning is going from, that in terms of tonight, we just said, like, come down to the council meeting. I looked on the line today, and it said that on the site that there was no meeting in December. The next meeting would be in January. So I did want to come down and address it. But the thing that what's going on with us, we had 15 days till this zoning. If it would have went, it would have got approved. And apparently, it would have been going on to do the impounding center or found out about the reasonability about it. But we would have never had a chance for a discourse. And I feel like council or the city has a responsibility to notify the residents of Fifth Ward if something like this is going to happen. And again, with the streets department, the way he made it sound, it was sort of given to him to find a place to do this. And he was naming the places where he was going to look at, and Norfolk Southern, different things. But the only thing that struck me was there's a planning commission, redevelopment authority, Gate Act, any of these areas where city property for such a thing would be going on besides Westfall and stuff like that there. And the third thing was Westfall, from my understanding, was always designated as recreation. And once this would be going on, it's turning into basically, and no disrespect, but because the police chief mentioned that some cars have been there for 10 years, that sounds like a junkyard to me. So we're just coming in, like, again, I just found out about this last minute, and my concerns are, I would appreciate whether council was going to discuss this in terms of, or is this how, in terms of how this is directed, is just simply the manager gives it to the streets department and the police chief, and they figure out how to find an impounding center for this. I'm sorry, that's it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing no other comment, we'll close the floor and move on to the resolutions.
Item A is approving the minutes of the Altoona City Council meeting held Monday, November 8th, 2021. Item B is authorizing the destruction of city public records in the attachment and ratifying the destruction of police department records in the attachment in accordance with the Municipal Records Manual of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Item C is authorizing an easement agreement between the City of Altoona and City Hall Commons for the purpose of the construction of a handicap accessible ramp and sidewalk as shown on the easement plan, and further authorizing the mayor to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item D is authorizing a right-of-way agreement between the city and Everstream Solutions of Cleveland, Ohio for construction and installation, maintenance, and operations of telecommunications facilities within the city's right-of-way, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item E is amending and restating the fee resolution 0111-19 to include updating the language under police for police photographs, deleting plus film cost, and the language and fees to reflect the small cell ordinance number 5781 as follows: the addition of small cell wireless facility fees and the deletion of the current language for wireless communications facility. Item F is setting the meeting date of Monday, January 10th, 2022 at 6 p.m. in the City of Altoona Training Facility and Council Chambers for the purpose of an organizational meeting of Altoona City Council and to conduct any other business that may come before council in accordance with the Home Rule Charter and Administrative Code of the City of Altoona. Are there any additions, deletions, or anything that needs to be pulled for separate vote?
No, but I just wanted to give an update on E. If everybody recalls back in, I believe it was our October meeting where we were originally going to vote on the small cell wireless ordinance for the fees. We tabled that so that we could communicate with some of the wireless industry on if they were okay with the fees that we were setting. They did have a couple of concerns, not with the fees themselves, but with the fact that any engineering work that was going to need done for reviewing the plans, there was no dollar amount attached to that, and they weren't comfortable with the unknowns of not knowing what they were going to be paying. So Nate worked with some engineering firms locally to have them come up with a dollar amount of what they'll charge for plan reviews. So that should satisfy everybody. I just wanted to give an update on that since it was back on the agenda.
Okay, I'll call for the consent vote. Vice Mayor Butterbaugh?
Yes.
Councilman Kashadi?
Yes.
Councilman Carper?
Yes.
Councilman Ickes?
Yes.
Councilwoman Jordan is absent. Councilman Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico?
Yes.
The consent vote passes 6-0. We have one ordinance on the agenda. It is the 2022 budget ordinance. It was introduced by the governing body. It's an ordinance of the City of Altoona in the County of Blair, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, appropriating specific sums estimated to be required for the specific purposes of the municipal government hereinafter set forth during the year 2022. Is there a motion for adoption?
Can we do this together also? I mean, I'll move, but
Yeah.
if we could do that. one
Governing
together.
body?
Yeah.
Okay. And sit.
I have a question. The current budget, and there was an article also run in the paper today about the Central Blair Rec. I had not realized it's been over a decade since any kind of audit service has been done. I know we don't have that budgeted, but is that something that we could use? You know, we have funds in contingency. We've talked about in the past about potentially covering those expenses or having the OBCO perform their attestation services as an expansion from our audit to that. So I wanted to ask, since this is on the agenda, is that something that we would be able to do?
It would be, and if council so chooses, we can bring it up at a future meeting if you want to go in that direction. I can, in the meantime, contact the city's auditor to get an estimation of the cost, but yeah, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Second.
This ordinance was moved for adoption by the governing body and seconded by the mayor, and I'll call for the vote. Councilman Butterbaugh,
Yes.
Councilman Kashotti,
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
Yes.
Councilman Ickes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jordan is absent, Councilman Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico,
Yes.
and the vote passes 6-0.
All right, we'll move on to council discussion items. Councilman Kelly.
If you drive around, if you drive around right now, clearly a lot of people didn't pay attention to the schedule for leaf bag pickup. And I know I caught myself just in time and was out raking in the dark so I could meet the Wednesday in my neighborhood. I'm just seeing a lot of bags stacked up out by curbs, and before we get a heavy snowfall, I'm just wondering if we as a courtesy can't run through the city one more time and just pick some of that up. I realize that the highway yard, people can go out there, but a lot of people may not have the kind of vehicle that they can transport several bags out or something, and if it wouldn't be a hardship, I'd spoken to Omar about this, if we could make another sweep through, because I'm just afraid if we don't, it's going to end up being our problem anyhow.
I was actually asked the other day, I was messaged and somebody asked if we could possibly extend it for a week every year, since the leaves sort of seem to be hanging around a little after Thanksgiving anyway, if that would be possible to look into that for next year, to just perhaps reschedule it a little later. But yeah, good points.
I'll work with Nate. We'll see what we can do to set a day, or I don't know if we need to do a whole week. Maybe there's just a day we'll just run through the city and do that. I don't know. We'll talk about it.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilman Carver.
I have nothing to add. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Butterbaugh.
I would just like to commend the light crew and whoever did all the work downtown to get it looking sharp for the holiday season. Good job.
Thank you. Councilman Ickes.
I have a couple things. First, the councilman off to my left, this is his last meeting after 8 years, and fortunate to have had the chance to get to work with you professionally in this aspect, and I've gotten to know you pretty well personally, and just want to thank you for your service to the city, and I know that you're a family man, you're a hard worker, and have a great time with Gabriel, and I just want to say really appreciate having the opportunity to work with you, so thank you. Sure. The second item I have is I have a family member that has been on and off in the UPMC Altoona emergency room with an estimated wait time of 56 hours at the present moment. It's really astonishing that that is the status of the emergency department at our local hospital. Just, I guess, making my comments known here, it's really hard to believe we have an international healthcare system here in our backyard, and we pay, UPMC officials are paid really well, north of $600,000 a year that work here in our community, and essentially our ER has turned into Venezuela. And I would really call on UPMC, it's really simple. I mean, treat your employees well, and sorry about your billions of dollars, UPMC, but I can speak that I've probably worked professionally this year with 15 or 20 nurses that aren't exactly at retirement age, but are close enough to say I'm done. COVID has probably been a lot of that has probably pushed that. But the other aspect has been the culture that has been built there. And obviously it's become very corporate driven. So those are the thoughts on that. Nate, I did have some follow-up questions from public comment on that. Let me pull up the email, if I may, here real quick. On an alley situation like Mr. Cruz had mentioned, I mean, what's the code allow? I mean, I'm not familiar with all of the specific codes as pertaining to the city. So, in a situation like that where there is a only one access point to that property. How do we handle that?
So, I had a meeting scheduled with Mr. Cruz today at 2 to discuss this down at the lot, down at 17th Street. In that particular case where he's at, there's a house along North 4th Avenue, and then there's a house, I believe, below on the same side of the road. The alleys existed forever, and it's not atypical of a lot of alleys in town where they've just kind of meandered one way or the other. So the alley over the years has gotten kind of pushed over towards Mr. Cruz's property that he just bought. So the pins are actually in the alley itself. There could possibly be a bust in the survey. I don't know to what expense I'm willing to go to prove whether or not the property lines are right. Looking at in this particular case, there were utility poles that kind of established either one side or the other side of a right-of-way in an alley, 15-foot right-of-way. In this particular case, looking at it in the field today, looking at the pins, kind of bringing up the block plans that we have on record, the engineering plans, trying to interpolate between everything. The property lines probably are pretty close to being accurate, so if Mr. Cruz so chose to do so, he could put a fence in, as you said. In this case, I really wouldn't ask the person that lives next to them to cut their trees down because they've kind of existed where they have for 50 years. So I think it's kind of a city, I don't know if it's really, it's kind of a courtesy, if we want to put a fence in and move the alley a little bit, it's probably just a common courtesy that we can move the alley 4 feet to accommodate a fence in that regard. As far as like a normal, if it's just a normal alley that's been established in, the city proper and it's a vegetation issue that's overhanging, Public Works doesn't have any officers to go out and enforce any type of enforcement, I guess. So Rebecca and I have been working together. I mean, as you know, about that enforcement process itself, it can be slow and tedious and sometimes unenforceable. So whenever we get one we used to.
You're just talking about it going through the system of what we're required.
Yeah, right, yeah, not anything relating to the city, just the system itself. But, so we would get a complaint, I can't, the middle of the alley, I can't get my garbage truck through, whatever.
Hey, what's that address again? Sorry to interrupt.
It's 17th Street and 4th Avenue, the corner lot.
17th and 4th.
It's between 4th and 5th on 17th. It's right across from Smith Welding. So, like in the past, we would send a letter out, but that was really all we did. And we kind of worked together and it's not in the property management code, it's actually in the city code of ordinances. So Rebecca had to get that added to. You can probably talk about your side of it, but.
We have the enforcement capability, where the Department of Public Works does not. If it would need to go to further enforcement action, maybe in terms of a citation, if they didn't comply. So Nate and I kind of had to work together on, they would first send out a letter from their department, and then we would follow up with a letter. That would pretty much be the official notice of violation. And then we could proceed with enforcement if the person did not comply. But it would start from Public Works. Now, also, in a case where, Nate's correct, where every once in a while we will have something that is kind of an urgent need that Public Works will have to take care of. And that's just for the safety of the residents, that travel these roads and streets. It's not anything but if it's an urgent need. They typically have only done that, I know, for even complaints that my department's received maybe 3 times or 4 times a year. And that's just something that we would need to have done immediately, just for the safety of the public. But that's how we're handling the process, where, the intake will come to him. But once they send out a letter and they don't get any response or compliance, it comes to me.
Okay.
That answer?
Yep.
Enough? Okay.
Thanks.
Can I say anything else?
What would you like to add?
Well, I'd like to add that I responded to Nate's email to meet him, and I never got an email back. I gave him both my telephone numbers, and I didn't get a phone call. Number 2, I would gladly pay Mr. butter body come down and survey my property to prove that my workers are right. And I would like to have somebody come down, I will hire someone, if those trees are weed trees and they're not 50 years old. I promise you, the trees that are there are weed trees that grow rapidly and they're not 50 years old. So
Okay.
I would debate and dispute any of that.
Well, I don't really think the age of the trees is super relevant to the issue, but sure, that's fine. All right, thank you. Do you have anything else, Councilman Ickes?
May everyone have a very Merry Christmas. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ditto.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everybody that the Christmas parade is tomorrow evening, 6 o'clock, starts on Green Avenue and goes down 11th. 6 o'clock, it's going to be fireworks afterwards. It's going to be a good time. Hope to see everybody there. And finally, I have one last thing. I would like to also take this time to thank Councilman Kashadi for 8 years here on Altoona City Council. This is kind of bittersweet because he and I both got elected the same year together. And it was really great to work with you, Matt. And yeah, I want to thank you for all your hard work and your dedication to the residents of Altoona. And here I have a certificate of appreciation and a key to the city for you.
Thanks, Sue.
And with that, Councilman Kashadi, do you have
Speech.
Yeah, I would like to say, everybody knows how much I enjoy going on. Exactly. Thank you. Everybody knows how much I enjoy going on and on at these meetings, right? So, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who supported me and voted for me. And over the past 8 years, I wanted to thank everybody in this room, the department heads, and serving with the council members. Getting to know each one of you on a professional level and a personal level, I can honestly say that the city's in good hands moving forward. You know, when I look back over the past 8 years, I would say, you know, there's a lot of challenges we had and a lot of really great advances. But two things that really stand out to me are downtown and also just the overall perception of the community. You know, 8 years ago when I ran for city council, I was going to get my signatures, and probably half of the people would say to me, why do you want to do this? Why are you running for city council? The perception was that it was almost like a burdensome thing. 4 years later, I ran for re-election. I didn't really hear that much. And I'm assuming that you all that are running now probably don't really hear that at all. I think the perception is that, you know, having a strong council, having a solid, young mayor that got involved at part-time for just a couple $1,000s a year. It took all those headaches on. You know, we have experienced council members here. You know, and then we have two younger council members that are rising stars, and they're coming into the community to do their part. I think just that all moves us forward into the perception that getting involved in your community is a cool thing to do. It's a good thing to do. And at the end of the day, that's really what makes Altoona better than any other city our size, or even bigger that has more resources. Is really just the people. That's really all it is. Downtown, when I look at downtown 8 years ago, you couldn't give it away. If we all remember what it was like downtown, you couldn't give downtown away. Now you look at downtown, and you see investors wanting to be down there, and developers and businesses opening up, and other local businesses are watching that, and they're just kind of watching to see what they're going to do and how successful they're going to be, and more importantly, they're watching all of us here because they want to see what we're going to do to help them or to hurt them or to just get the heck out of their way and let them conduct business. So that's very important, and that's something that's a very very public accolade that everybody can see. You know, we can talk about the budget. We can talk about having a balanced budget during COVID, and that was a challenge. We can talk about the water authority. That was a challenge. But something like that, something like putting your finger on the perception of the young people getting involved, being excited to get involved into the community, and things like reinvigorating a downtown, those are things that you can really pinpoint. So that would be, you know, my perspective of the 8 years. Now looking forward, transitioning back into just a, you know, a constituent, a tax-paying member of the community that's going to vote or not vote for you. I'm going to be watching things like the land bank. I would love to see the land bank really get a strong foundation under it. I think that could be used as a catalyst for more business incentives to come into the city, such as, you know, buying these dilapidated and blighted buildings and properties and transferring it over to the redevelopment authority and having local contractors, you know, buy them up and turn them into something of tax base. There's challenges with that, so they would have to work directly with the codes department. Right now, I know a lot of the vacant lots you can't build on, but you know, I have such faith in the council and the department heads that you all could figure that out moving forward. And the last thing I'll say, and you guys are so tired of hearing me talk about it, are those trees on 7th Street and 8th Street. Like the last city manager used to call me Councilman Lorax because I was bringing it up all the time. I hate those trees. It's my last meeting. I can say whatever. I don't have to blow smoke. They're terrible. It's the main, you know, thoroughfare into and out of the city. And I understand they were a gift, but they're a stress on our guys, on our work staff. They're a safety hazard because they you know, tore up the concrete. They're a tripping hazard. The buses are hitting the branches. They're shabby. They're unkept. If I was a wealthy man, I would just donate the money to just chop those all down and redo the concrete and put shrubbery there or whatever beautification. But I would love to hear, you know, sometime within the next couple of years that we could find money through the general fund or through ARPA or whatever, or through some donations or community outreach to really help out that, you know, those main thoroughfares there, especially now that we're seeing some business go in there and you're going to start seeing more traffic and more commerce going in there. It would look a lot prettier. So in conclusion, I would just say anybody that wants to get involved, but you're not really sure what aspect you would like to be involved in the community, I know everybody in this room, personally and professionally, and every one of them would definitely email you back if you were to get a hold of them and say, listen, I don't know if being elected official is for me. I get that. Of all of us, I'm probably one that understands that the most. I mean, if you don't eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff, but you have a skill set that you'd like to get involved in the community, whether it be, you know, volunteering for cleanup days or volunteering on a board or, I don't know, more, you know, more influence in your church or civic organization or something like that. Whatever the skill set is, there's something for you. There's an aspect of community involvement, and like I said, at the end of the day, that's all it is. That's what is going to keep our city, is by us getting involved. So, I have complete respect for everybody here. The community members trust the department heads. They trust this council. They trust the mayor. That's a unique position to be in local politics. It's a better position than governing by strength because you're governing by trust. But the bad thing about trust is you're always one decision away from losing it. And once you lose it, it's gone. But right now, with the strength of this council and the strength of these department heads, I don't have to make up anything. I can say it straight that the community, we trust you. That's a big deal. We trust your decisions, and just please keep up the good work. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do in the coming years. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Well said.
It is.
Oh, it's definitely as long as, yeah. Okay, we'll open it up for questions from the media. Bill?
Thanks. What is the significance of item D, the Everstream right-of-way resolution? Is that a competitor, potential competitor to Atlantic Broadband? Or
Nate, you want to? It is not.
It is not, Bill. It's just another supplier of dark broadband in the city. Similar to not Comcast, but we have a couple other people's that have the same. Yeah, begins with a Z. It escapes me right now, but they have the same type of agreements. They just hang on existing poles. This isn't new poles. This is just dark fiber, and this is a dish network broadband backup for businesses.
Oh, okay. Not a new cable company coming?
No,
Okay.
no, and they do have some dark fiber though that they're putting in along with it, but it's just like any of the other providers that hang cable on the poles, and they have agreements with Verizon and Penelec to,
Right.
attach to their poles, so.
Okay. Can I get a status report, I guess, on the McCrory's building?
It's still ongoing. I don't have any update to give you at this
So
point.
nothing new to
No.
report, okay. Does anyone want to comment on the comment made by the gentleman from Logan Township about well, I guess he's in the city, about the impound lot that is in Logan Township?
From the police perspective, I know you were at the zoning board hearing. You wrote an article on it. As we mentioned there, their concerns were heard. Some of them I was able to address immediately. Some of them were more appropriate addressed by Director Kissel. There's nothing new or changed since
Okay.
that.
Okay,
So at least from my perspective, that's where we are on that.
Bill, Nate's looking at some alternative sites that could potentially work in place of Westfall.
oh, okay. Would you care to say, Nate, like what the likelihood is that you'll find something else that's satisfactory?
I don't really have any type of odds. This was no different. I mean, again, as I tried to mention or spell out before, that this was just a preliminary step to get approval to even go on to the next step to see if the feasibility of this could fly. So yeah, we have some additional sites or sites that we're expanding on also. But yeah.
And Nate,
You-
my understanding is that the final decision wouldn't be up to us. Wouldn't that be up to Logan Township?
That is correct. As far as the ruling goes,
Yeah, sure.
as far as funding or anything else, then that would be up to the city.
Right,
But
okay.
at this particular, or any site really.
Okay, Jesse, could you, I couldn't hear you.
I just asked if the final decision would be ours or Logan Township, but the final approval, as Nate had said, for it to go there would be Logan Township's.
Right, right. Okay. Omar, the CBRC audit potentially, would that be kind of like an add-on to the city audit? Is that the way you envision it?
Yeah, so we would approach, should we, proceed in that direction, I would approach the city's auditor, because I know they're familiar with CBRC and other city-related entities, to give us a price on what it would cost. We actually did that before, but then didn't proceed. I'd imagine that cost probably somewhat changed by now, so
Do you know when the last time they had an audit was?
I don't.
It's been over a decade.
And that previous audit, wasn't that sort of a, I don't know the right term for it, wasn't that sort of like a partial?
Yeah, it wasn't a full attestation or assurance service, which is what's required for like cities and townships. They're required to have a full entire audit done. CBRC being, and I always get the terminology incorrect. It's some
Council
type
of Governments.
Very good. Yes, that they're not required to have one every year like municipal governments or other authorities are. So
Right.
that's probably a lot of the reason that it hasn't been done for the continued period of time.
Right. Well, do you happen to know the correct name for the partial audit they had before?
I don't, Bill.
Okay.
Sorry.
And then, Linda, when was the leaf collection? Yeah, do you remember, or do you know?
Nate, do you remember? It was the end of October,
It ended
and it ended on the week
Wednesday, the week before Thanksgiving.
before Thanksgiving, yeah.
You mean like the Friday before Thanksgiving?
Thursday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.